Welcome back to the Daily Bread Bible Study. We are looking at day 83 for March 23rd, 2020, focusing on 1 Samuel chapters 8 through 12. So today we will discuss more about the rise of God's king, but also learn that this comes with an unexpected twist. So jumping into 1 Samuel 8. Samuel was an inspiring leader, devoted to God since the day he was born. His leadership made time pass rather uneventfully, and justice was served his whole life long. When he became old, he needed to pass the torch, and people did not respect his sons who were corrupt, as it says in 1 Samuel 8:3. His sons did not follow in his ways, but turned aside after gain. They took bribes and perverted justice. So the elders of Israel wanted his family out, and instead they wanted to replace him with a king, saying in verse 5, "You are old, and your sons do not follow in your ways. Appoint for us then a king to govern us, like other nations." Just a reminder, the time of the judges, such as Samuel's kind of at the end of the judges' time, involved more kind of regional influence, that they had a particular area where they had more influence than not. And many of the tribes had leaders who arose to judge Israel. Samuel had been told by God to replace Eli, and remember when it was said in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 35, "I will raise up for myself a faithful priest, who shall do according to what is in my heart and in my mind. I will build him a sure house, and he shall go in and out before my anointed one forever." So this anointed one, this chosen one, this Messiah figure is connected with the prophetic message that Samuel is inhabiting, the priestly message he functions in. So now we see that Samuel is kind of in the same boat that Eli was. Both of their sons were doing things that were considered wrong by God, making incorrect choices. God hoped that Israel would become something different than other nations, but now sees that they are set in their ways of wanting to be like other nations. And so this makes God upset. And Samuel feels personally attacked and rejected. But God says, "Oh no, Samuel, don't you worry. It's not a rejection of you, but rather a rejection of me." They have, for 1 Samuel 8:7, God says, "They have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them." God tells Samuel to give them a king, but to warn them that having a king, other than God being your king, of course, is going to come with its challenges, namely reversing the Exodus from Egypt's story. It says in 1 Samuel 8:17 through 18 that you will be his slaves, and in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. And just a reminder in the list that it says here of what the king will do, it says, he will take from you, yada, 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 yada. And so the king is going to take from the people, and they're going to have to give to him. So Samuel, after consulting God, consents to their request. In 1 Samuel chapter 9, we transition to a new character, and the scene changes. A Benjamite man named Saul. Saul is reported to be tall and handsome. Saul is from a wealthy family. And while trying to find some lost donkeys, Saul journeys without success. He then learns from his companion that there is a man of God in this town. He is held in honor. Whatever he says always comes true. From 1 Samuel 9:6. So they go to see the seer, as it's said here, or prophet. It's another way it could be said in the shrine. And in verse 15, Now, the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed to Samuel, "Tomorrow at this time I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him to be ruler over my people Israel." So God is at work planning and providing for a way for this king to come to be, even though God does not think it is a good decision. In fact, God clarifies to Samuel as he sees Saul for the first time that Saul is in fact to be anointed king. And without mentioning it, Samuel tells Saul to forget about the lost donkeys which have already been found, kind of an example of a sign, knowing it as a seer, as a knower. He can be able to know that what Saul is looking for before it being spoken. So Samuel wants Saul to stay with him since Israel's desire is fixed upon Saul. Then Saul downplays himself, saying, "My family is the humblest of all," in chapter 9, verse 21, which I don't know if that's, I imagine that the author is just trying to say that Saul is humble and that he is a good fit for king, but not exactly sure why that is, since it mentioned previously that he comes from a rather wealthy family. Not to say that wealth and humility are the same, but often humility is regarded with meekness and the poor as well too. So anyways, but yes, his family is the humblest of all. Strange phrase to say. Saul then finds himself at a sort of dinner party with Samuel and 30 guests and spends the night at Samuel's location. And as they are passing through town, Samuel has just one more thing to tell Saul that he didn't mention before. Surprise! In chapter 10, "The Lord has anointed you ruler over his people Israel. You shall reign over the people of the Lord, and you will save them from the hand of their enemies all around." I wonder what the look on Saul's face was. We will see in next chapter that Saul is a little hesitant to receive this. Samuel mentions 3 upcoming signs for Saul. 1, messengers saying that the donkeys are found. 2, that 3 travelers will pass and bless him with 2 loaves of bread, because he currently was out of provisions. And then 3, a musical band of prophets will make music in a prophetic frenzy for him. And so it happens that in 1 Samuel 10, 6 through 7, "Then the Spirit of the Lord will possess you, and you will be in a prophetic frenzy along with them, and be turned into a different person. Now when you see these signs meet you, do whatever you see fit to do, for God is with you." So as he turned away to leave Samuel, God gave him another heart, and all these signs were fulfilled that day. And, like he mentioned, and Samuel prophesied, that upon meeting the musical prophets, Saul falls into a prophetic frenzy too, and people now see that Saul is changed and ask the phrase, is Saul among the prophets? Meaning this idea that Saul, who had never shown signs of being a prophet before, is now acting very strange and really out of character when people observe him. Moving on, 7 days later, Samuel is at Mizpah and calls the people together. After proclaiming they are abandoning God for an earthly king, he casts lots to determine which king they will choose. And casts the lots, and it comes on the tribe of Benjamin. And the lots are thrown again, and the family of Matrites is picked. And then the person of Saul is selected. And Saul, probably knowing this is coming, is reported to have been hiding in the luggage, maybe not wanting to accept the role of king. Not sure why it mentions it, but Saul never accepts the kingship. Saul never officially accepts the kingship, but the people decree, "Long live the king." So in verse 24, Saul is made king. And Samuel records the rights and duties of a king, and all the people disperse. And as they are leaving, a few doubters begin immediately into his tenure, saying, "How can this man save us?" And they despised him and brought him no present. So we see that there are already people skeptical of Saul, and in some ways they will be proven right. Saul then gains command of an army to fight the Ammonites, and we pick it up in chapter 11, verse 6. And the Spirit of God came upon Saul in power when he heard these words, and his anger was greatly kindled. He took a yoke of oxen and cut them in pieces, and sent them throughout all the territory of Israel by messengers, saying, "Whoever does not come out after Saul and Samuel, so shall it be done to his oxen." And the dread of the Lord fell upon the people, and they came out as one. So this is kind of a strange play on what we saw at the end of the book of Judges, that a similar summons is made against Gibeah there at the end of Judges, and the other 12 tribes are summoned to go ahead and fight against the Gibeah, or those in Gibeah, and destroy that city. And the Benjaminites stand against their brothers in a form of a civil war. But this time, the roles are returned, and it's the Benjaminites calling people out to war and calling their brethren to come and aid them in battle against the Ammonites for the good of Israel instead of to the destruction of part of it. So, find that interesting. Saul then leads the forces and smites the Ammonites from Jabesh. And the people see he wins victory and gives him respect. And they seek to put to death the doubters from last chapter. But instead of having them put them to death, Saul instead shows mercy. As it says in 1 Samuel 11:13, "But Saul said, 'No one should be put to death this day, for today the Lord has brought deliverance to Israel.' So Samuel said to the people, 'Come, let us go up to Gilgal, and there renew the kingship.' And so all the people went up to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal." So they stamped it and sealed it officially. Saul is now the king of Israel. Samuel believes he has done his part, anointing Saul as king. And Samuel wants them to restate this, that we freely choose having a king and enslaving ourselves to his leadership. Samuel then recounts the story to that point, starting all the way with the famine of Jacob, the Egyptian oppression, the Exodus story, and the wandering in the wilderness, the conquest of the promised land and the land distribution, idolatry leading to new oppression, and God sending judges to rescue them. And finally, they want a human king like other nations. 1 Samuel 12:14, he says, Samuel the prophet says, "If you will fear the Lord and serve him and heed his voice and not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, and if both you and the king who reigns over you will follow the Lord your God, it will be well. But if you will not heed the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then the hand of the Lord will be against you and your king." Samuel then performs a sign of thunder and rain to reveal God's displeasure at their demand for a king, and thus completing being like other nations. The afraid people acknowledge their sin of demanding to be like other nations, of wanting a king, and Samuel promises that God will still bless them. Just God is temporarily angry, but will bless those who, quote unquote, fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. Thus, the rise of God's king seems to end here with the appointment of Saul, yet, as we will see, Saul is not God's king for long. Saul will have a problem of obeying the Lord that will lead to the rise of God's new king. So we will pick up the story of the rise of God's king next time.